Welcome everybody to our second session of our virtual trade mission to Israel. My name is Miles Hansen. I'm the president and CEO of World Trade Center Utah. We just finished a few minutes ago our first session, a general introductory session with Dr. Hillel Newman from the Consulate General of Israel in Los Angeles. For anybody who didn't join us then, I encourage you to go to our website. We have a recording of that session there. Hillel provided a phenomenal overview of Israel's economy, gave us an update on the political dynamics there, as well as talked about how COVID-19 has impacted Israel. And most importantly, and one of my biggest takeaways, is Hillel explained how over the past few decades, Israel took a look at the challenges that it faced, whether it was water security, national security, food security, and rather than relying on others to figure out how to address these problems or relying on current technologies, Israel decided, you know what, we have these challenges. We want to have a strong, secure, prosperous state for our people. And so we're going to develop new technologies to solve these problems. And Israel was very successful in doing so. I learned a lot as we think about the state of Utah, how we're going to bounce back from COVID-19 and then what we want to do with our economy over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years and the challenges that we face due to our growth. I had many takeaways, and I think that Israel provides a model that we can emulate here, and that I look forward to following up on our side to ask ourselves, how do we take the challenges that we face and not just rely on existing technologies or others, but partner with countries and markets just like Israel and leaders in those markets to solve those problems and come up with new technologies to do so, something that we've been successful at here in Utah, and Israel has been tremendously successful at. And so we're looking forward to partnering with them today. Today to learn more about that technology and innovation ecosystem in Israel. And we have three phenomenal leaders from Israel joining us today. You'll see that unlike most of our webinars, we've structured today's breakout session as a meeting. So welcome to everybody who are joining and participating by Zoom. We also have people watching live on YouTube, and we are recording this session. And so many others will have an opportunity to watch this after the fact. We ask that everybody keep their mics muted. In the Q&A sessions, you can either submit a question by chat. Many of you have already submitted questions when you registered, but also feel free to unmute yourself and to jump in and ask a question of any of our speakers today. I'm very excited and grateful to Adiv Baruch, Moshe Karako, and Arian Barzilay for joining us. Moshe and Aaron, we'll hear more from you later. First, we're going to hear from Adiv Baruch. Adiv and I had a chance to speak late last week, and Adiv is a phenomenal leader of tech and innovation in Israel. He's currently the chairman of Israel's Export and International Cooperation Institute. He was the founder of Nest Technologies, a global IT service company. He served as the president of Niotron, a global cyber technology company. And he's also the chairman of the Jerusalem Technology Investments, which I believe is one of the largest fund of funds in Israel. And Adiv, if it's okay, I'll go ahead and I'm going to read your bio here, just because I want everybody listening in and watching later to really understand the breadth of your experience and your expertise and how honored and grateful we are, not only for your commitment of time over the next hour to help us understand the lay of the land in Israel's tech and innovation ecosystem, but also your offer to help follow up. We do these things not just to provide good information, but if our primary objective is to prompt action among our Utah companies that otherwise wouldn't have happened. And so we're looking forward to partnering with you and our other speakers and our friends across Israel to help our Utah companies identify partnership opportunities, growth opportunities, capital opportunities, to both take our technologies that we've developed here to Israel and vice versa. And so Adiv Baruch has been involved in the high-tech industry for the last 32 years. Currently, Mr. Baruch also serves as chairman of Jerusalem Technology Investments and Mayan Ventures, a platform for investments in innovative Israeli technology companies. Additionally, Mr. Baruch serves as the chairman of Covertix, whose patented technology delivers real-time, non-invasive control, protection, and tracking of confidential files. Mr. Baruch is the chairman of Institute of Technology and Innovation, which is a leader in educating technology professionals and innovative entrepreneurs. Mr. Baruch served as chairman of the Public Committee, the High Tech and Telecom Division at the Israel Export and International Cooperation Institute, and he was a member of the Audit Committee of the Board of the IEICI, Previously, Mr. Baruch was one of the founders of Nest Technologies. He grew the company to become the first Israeli IT service company into a global IT services company. Mr. Baruch has served as president of Nirotron, a global cyber technology company, and served as director of the Bank of Jerusalem. And he serves or has served on the boards of a variety of charitable organizations, including Make-A-Wish Foundation, and he is currently active chairman of Or Lakayal. Also, he had been an active member of the Young President Organization. Mr. Baruch has global experience and is involved with a variety of companies in the US, Tel Aviv, and Hong Kong stock exchanges. Mr. Baruch served in the Israeli Navy and holds an engineering degree from Technion, the leading engineering institute in Israel. And I will add that Adiv has a phenomenal view out of his house of Tel Aviv. When we spoke last week, he turned on the video and he showed me the view of the sea setting or the sun setting in the Mediterranean. And I told him that I met my wife. We both were students in Israel. And so that view, we spent a lot of time on the beach there in Tel Aviv, so that brought back a lot of memories. So Adiv, thank you again for being with us. We look forward to hearing it and having this discussion with you. And I'll go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Well, thank you, Miles. Thank you for the warm introduction and reading the bio. Also, it has to be updated, but it's okay. I'm just kidding. We've spent a lot of time on my bio. So first of all, welcome everyone. I think it's a good morning Utah time. So it's evening Israel time. And it's an amazing and great honor to be here to speak in front of you. Although it's, using the Zoom platform, it's more of a monologue than having a dialogue, which we do when we have the open crowd. Because my first question would have been, well, how many of you have been to Israel, and for how many of you is the first time exposure to Israel? So please raise your hand, at least those I can see on the video. How many times have you been to Israel? So you've been to Israel for 7 times, I see, friends. That's great. That's fantastic. But speaking to Miles, preparing the presentation for today to create the proper, I would say, practical information to the audience, I kind of blended the presentation with past, present, and future, just in order for us to elaborate and to help building the proper bridges between Utah and Israel. So a few words about the Israeli Expert Institute. Yes, we've been incepted 62 years ago by the Israeli government. It's the first private, public, non-for-profit organization, realizing then that economic relationships are sometimes far more important and even more sustainable than political relationships. And we've seen that throughout the years. And as we have evolved from being a country that our export was very minimal, by 2019, export became the most important part of our economy. As we know, we'll go through the presentation. I'll give you some facts and figures. If you give me a second, we'll go into the presentation with your permission. And as we go, we'll give me a couple more minutes. We all have the patience, right? Let's see if for some reason it doesn't open within the share. Let's try it again. Let's see how we're doing here. Do we see the presentation yet?
I don't see it yet. Let's see, I know we have Hannah on there. And Adiv, are you sharing it on your side?
No, I'm actually sharing it on both sides. Do we see now the presentation?
Nope, not yet.
Hannah, if you have it, do you maybe want to upload it?
No, you don't have it, but
He hasn't sent it to me.
it's amazing. That's amazing. It worked before, so give me one more second.
Take your time. And I think we've all recognized over the past few months how we can do these types of things, and amazing that we can bring people together with Zoom. And it creates a lot of opportunities that didn't exist before we were all so good at using Zoom and used it so much. But at the same time, it also presents some unique technical challenges, and it doesn't always work the way it did even just a few minutes ago. So we're making a lot of progress, still some room to go. And so we're all, I think, very adept and aware and sympathetic to technical challenges. And for those working at home, you know, the challenges of kids running in, disturbing meetings and that type of thing.
Let's give it last chance. No. Okay, last chance. Let's see if it works now.
Okay, look at that. I can see it now on my screen.
Can you see the presentation now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. There we go. Are we all good now?
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay, so first of all, just a short snapshot to those who have not been to Israel. As you all know, if the world population about 7.6 billion, Israel represents today about 8.8 million, which represent about 0.1% of the population worldwide. Now, moving forward, giving you a big of a snapshot, we as a size compared to Utah, there are 22,000 square kilometers in Israel. Okay, so that gives you enough proportion to the states. And of course, we joined the OECD in 2010, which kind of expedite the process in many ways to control and to improve the country. If we look 35 years ago, in 1984, as a snapshot, our GDP was only about $6,800. Moving down to 2019, we've reached 42,000 as part of our GDP. But the most important, going from 444% inflation rate to 0.6% inflation rate. I will skip the numbers as we're limited in time. From a credit rating, Israel went through a tremendous progress and moved up today as being a very stable country, both on Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch rating. You can see that we have got even AA minus rating, which also helped Israel during the COVID-19 to raise some debt and funds at a very low interest, much lower than 10 years ago, which were nearly 8%. This now we're raising it at about 0.5% on the country level. Now, throughout the years in 2019, we have reached the highest number of dollars export. We have we have exceeded over 114 billion US dollars of export out of Israel. And as a GDP per capita, there's a pure correlation between our GDP and export. And that's why you can realize how important export is our country. And our numbers as of today are nearly $43,000 per capita as our GDP. Continue going forward, realizing that exporting, if we look about 38 years ago, moving from citrus fruits all the way to goods and services, and it's pretty much on the 60-40%, that 60% will come from goods being exported and 40% will be export based. But the key and the most important part is that nearly 50% of our export today is coming from tech-related industries. And you can see that it's pretty much divided, that even 50% of our 50% export is coming from high-tech industries, moving to mid-tech, low-tech, and mid-low-tech. But it's amazingly important to understand that we have increased our export in the high-tech services, which is increasing the net profit of our services and products on a very extremely numbers. And in 2019, we've reached over 33 billion US dollars in export of tech services. If we look at the sectors of our technology services, anyway from pharmaceutical products, and this is about technology sectors in a different portion of it, but you can also see that 46% of the Israeli export is coming from what we call the tech services, as we have described. Let's not lose time on the different subject. We can always elaborate later on the Q&A if it's important. What we today believe that our key differentiator to export the product is coming from our innovation. The Israeli innovation has many forms and factors to it. And I kind of chose a few of them to show you. When we look at the Bloomberg ratio, Israel today is ranked at 5th most innovative country in the world. And you can see the global map versus US was ranked at 8th, Germany who's ranked at 2. But the main reason that Israel is ranked number 5 versus number 1, you can see on the ranking and the scores. Part of that has to do with our size, and the second all, the industry size. So if we look at the OECD and the World Economic Forum, where Israel is ranked as number 3 in the world based on score, which is the same score as United States and Switzerland, the reasons for that are coming again from the form factors of the size and industries. Now, when it comes to R&D investment, Israel is ranked today as the number 1 country in the world in expenditure of R&D as percentage of the GDP. And you can see based to Korea and Switzerland, why are we ranked number 1? And you can see that for years, it's the same ratio. We have realized as a country who did not have any natural resources, and only lately we found some gas, our main assets and resources for our country are the human capital. So for years back, you can see that we are pretty much flat on the same number of ratio of investment per capita versus the other countries who are just moving up the slope. If you look at our investments on full-time employees, which usually the numbers are, I believe, about 15 full-time employees or 4.5 full-time employees per, I would say, I think the numbers are 15,000 employees. So in that ratio, again, we are ranked very high on that map. If you look at our capability to attract capital into Israel, so yes, Israel also been ranked as number one by VC investment per capita. And the reason of that is due to the fact, and we'll elaborate later on, the ecosystem that we have created through our education systems, going all the way back to our high school, our military education, which is part of our education processes, and our academy, who all of them are interrelated and connected through our career path. When it comes to publicly traded companies in the world, so yes, if you look at NASDAQ, Israel is ranked as the number 2 largest number of companies who went public in NASDAQ. And if you look at the ecosystem that have been created in Israel, we have over 6,000 startups which are active. That's a huge number, and the inception of new company every day is one of the highest in the world. Even during the COVID-19 phenomena, we still have new inceptions and new ideas coming up on a daily basis. We just don't stop. And if you look at our history in the last 7 years, I think 2019 was the peak high that we have been able to attract over 9.3 billion US dollar to be invested in Israel in over 500 transactions. And we can also realize that most of the capital that are being invested in Israel is foreign attracted capital. I think that in 2019, over 93% of the new capital injected in Israel was foreign-driven capital. Now, as we can see that part of our ecosystem is being driven also by the multinational who are very active in Israel. And this is the list of some of the leading companies who are actively having scouting activities in Israel and have done investments on an annual basis and are continuously growing and searching. And companies from Intel and Salesforce and Amazon, all those companies are active in acquiring the Israeli innovative companies. Now, that is driven by the fact of our multinational who have set up their R&D center in Israel. Due to the ecosystem and talent that we have in Israel, we have over 400 companies who have set up their second R&D center outside of the US in Israel. We won't go over the list, but you can see that the leading company in the world and the leading segments have created the ecosystem. Now, I'm skipping that due to time constraints so we can leave more time, but we can see that every year we continuously having new multinationals, and the new multinationals are becoming leaders, setting up their R&D center in Israel with a diversification in the fields. And the latest fields that have been created amazing ecosystem are in the fintech, and of course, you know, since the acquisition of Mobileye by Intel, all of a sudden we've been able to create a full ecosystem of over 500 companies in the space of mobility. Now remember that Israel has never produced one single car. And in our history, we had one car being assembled called Susita, but we did not produce cars. All of a sudden, when the car industry has become a computer on wheels, and Intel and the acquisition of Mobileye, we have become one of the most important hubs to the world when it comes to the mobility space. Now, some of the segments that are very relevant to Utah, and we'll speak about 3 segments. Of course, you'll have more and deeper session on them. But let's look at the alternative energy, and especially the water. Israel, of course, within our region, we are always scarce of resources. And we have two sources of water. As our belated president Shimon Peres used to say, one is dead, which is the Dead Sea, and one is dying, that was the Kinneret. But we are now producing 86% of our water that will come in from water recycled and water desalination. It's the highest in the world. And of course, we have created an ecosystem of over 600 companies in the water field industry. Now let's look at what we call the medical health, the IT, medical products, and the whole healthcare ecosystem, which COVID-19 really exposed to the world what Israel has to offer. In the field of healthcare and IT solution, we have over 1,500 companies who have created an amazing advanced solution when it comes to remote monitoring. And of course, as we see the evolution of the medical services moving from the hospital into the home care, and COVID-19 have shown what Israel technology can be deployed and has been deployed on a global scale. Of course, the third field that we'll expose during our sessions here in the cyberspace, and that has to do with many reasons. First of all, as our military services, we always keep saying that we are the most beautiful house in the worst neighborhood. And of course, the existing war, they're not the physical wars that we have been exposed to and been trained. The war are in the cybernetic space and the cyberspace. Therefore, in Israel, due to our circumstances, we have become one of the leading hubs to the world when it comes to cyber activities, both from, especially on the defense side. We have created many global companies who were incepted in Israel. We've seen Checkpoint and CyberArk and Cybereason and others, but a tremendous ecosystem in the cyberspace. Now, COVID-19, when we moved many of our services on steroids into the digital space, that also increased the digital crime. So all of a sudden we have an increase of demand for our cyber services due to the COVID-19 expedite movement to the digital space. Of course, there are additional many sectors that we've taken leadership position around the world. But let's remember that all those sectors, the initial incentive to develop them came from our necessity and our openness to share it with the world. Of course, the agri-tech, the food tech, the fintech, and so forth. But if we look today at the numbers compared to the world, let's just move the video. It's amazing to see that Israel, compared to our OECD countries, we are considered still to be a very young relative country. And that gives us the energy, and it's well divided between the female and the male and the aging group. And we're very dynamic when it comes to that part. Now, of course, the population percentage, we have one of the lowest percentage of population over 65, the age of 65, while the aging and the lifetime expectancy is still increasing. But the birth rate in Israel per capita is still on an average of 3 per family, keeps our country young and vital. Now, as far as the Israeli economy, some of the key factors today to those who really want to do business both in Israel on a bilateral trade. First and foremost, we are considered to be free and open economy. As a country, we're export oriented. This is our growth engine, but that means that we have practiced our international and global activities, and we're very much open. We'll discuss the US in a second. Our high-skilled human resources is one of our major differentiator. And of course, our rapid development of technology and high-tech, which we discuss. But the beauty of it is really our entrepreneurial culture. And the entrepreneurial culture of the Israelis actually coming from those layers. First and foremost, our survivalness. You know, we're the younger generation, first generation who funds. Our parents who fled from Europe, who came to Israel, most of the families came with no assets. And we're the first generation to build the assets. We have the chutzpah, and the chutzpah on the positive side, not on the negative side, to try to say what we think, what we believe, and to go with all of our heart by having no fear to fail. Because we always been trained, failure is not an option. We have the values, going back to our 4,000 years of Judaism and history, and our Judaism has a major impact on our values and culture. But at the same time, we like the balagan. We're unstructured thinking, and we do like to move fast forward because there is no tomorrow. So if we take all those parameters, combine our technological innovation together with our human capital, those are the two ingredients that really make our economy grow and prosper. Now, if we look at our relationship with the US and the total trade, of course, the US is our #1 partner for our bilateral trade. And as you can see, we continuously increasing. Since 2016 until 2019, we have increased by 23% on our bilateral trade. That exclude the diamond, that's only services and products. And of course, the culture and the true partnership that we have between the US and Israel and the strong binds are the ones who make the difference. So by saying that, we are here committed, we're truly committed, and the whole team of the Israeli Expert Institute, together with Sabine and Alan and the team who is on the call as well, we are committed to make sure that anyone in the audience who wants to do business with Israel, through Israel, to combine forces for the global competition, we are here to do our utmost to help you to be successful and for all of us to succeed together in this journey. So I think from a time perspective, we're good on time, as I took it on 20-minute base. So Miles, can we open or any questions or any additional items you would like me to elaborate on?
Yep, that was perfect. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And now we're going to turn over to Courtney Ray from the World Trade Center Utah team is going to help facilitate our discussion.
Thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation. We appreciate that. So we heard between Dr. Newman's presentation this morning and your presentation, this mentioned that you have more than 400 companies that have set up R&D centers in Israel. Are there incentives for Utah companies to set up their R&D centers there, and who should we talk to about doing that? Because that's clearly an appealing thing for companies to do.
First of all, it's always an appealing thing for companies to do because there's always the tax benefits and the setup structures to go forward. There's the free trade agreement between US and Israel. Our economic attaches are the first partners in the US to help you meet all the necessary processes. But even from Utah base, which is under the US-Israeli free trade agreement, there are amazing benefits for US companies to set up an R&D center in Israel.
Okay. We will have our companies look into that. Maybe we can touch on that a little bit more in the roundtable discussion when we when FICC presents there as well. You know, one of the things we've heard about, and you touched on briefly in terms of healthcare, and from your technological perspective, Miles and I had a conversation this morning with someone who had mentioned that the Israelis were way ahead of other countries in terms of harnessing their data with healthcare for the last 30 years. And I'm just curious how, you know, it sounds like you're so far ahead of other countries. How have you use that data, how you centralize that in some way. And there are obviously in the United States, there have been a lot of legal barriers for how to centralize data, but that's so essential now in this post-COVID world. And how can we make our healthcare system more efficient and helpful, especially in this digitalized world? So I'm curious, how have the Israelis worked with that data to make it useful?
Well, I think this question, you're speaking right to the right person, because I was the one who founded the first company to actually integrate the complete different system within the hospital in order to give a unified picture on the patient. That was almost 22 years ago. Since then, I'm still involved, and we are running the electronic medical records. And Israel has an amazing, unique situation that you have a large HMO, which controls about 14 hospitals. You have the regulator, the Ministry of Health, who also owns about 12 hospitals or some private hospital, but 82% of the hospital are computerized by the same electronic medical records. And there is an additional layer who aggregates the information from the community doctors, the laboratories, the hospitals, and unifying the data and still keeping the privacy issue. Because as we understand and we know the HIPAA laws in the States and the privacy issue, which is really the most sensitive part of it, you can still create big data and what we call the data lakes without intervene or take advantage of the privacy issues. Because Israel, each person has what we call the citizen ID. Through the citizen ID, you can reach information, and for medical records, you can still have the full picture without breaching it and without reaching and identifying with a pure correlation between the patient and the data.
That's amazing. And who has been able to synthesize that data and keep it private? Is that the company or effort that you had done, or does the government control that?
It's our Ministry of Healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
The Ministry of Healthcare had deployed that integration layer with the HMOs, the private hospital, and the hospitals, and that had proven it's a life-saving. I will give you an example. How many times you had a situation that we have lost people in the emergency room because they came unconscious and they were receiving treatment that the doctors who treated them in the emergency room did not have the historical records of that patient. Now, in Israel, even when you enter the emergency room, based on your ID, you can be unconscious. They can swipe that number, and all of a sudden they will aggregate all the information from the different sources that it was created to give the doctors who are treating that patient the unified picture. So even when you give them a treatment or medicine, it will not collide with the medicine that that person is taking. So that those systems had proven that they're life-saving.
That's amazing. We have a company here called Health Catalyst, who I've been speaking with a lot, who's been starting to do a lot of that, or has been doing a lot of that data analysis, and it's really saving just millions and millions of dollars per hospital across the country, and saving lives and making everything more efficient and the customer experience much better. So sounds like we all have a lot to learn from Israel on that. So that's fascinating. Speaking of data control, I wanted to ask you about cybersecurity, because you touched on that as well.
Yes.
You know, cutting edge technology in terms like machine learning and artificial intelligence are always a big draw for audiences. But the majority of the security compromises result from enterprises that are not following well-documented best practices. Why do you think that is, and what do you recommend doing about that?
I think it has to do with the awareness. I think people are less cautious when it comes to that part, and they're using less what we call methodologies in order to protect their main assets. The digital data today are the main assets of any organization, any structure. And I've seen it, I still see, even though I sit on boards of banks and so forth, and even though the regulation and the sensitivity of those issues, you know how most people will say, well, I hear about it, it will happen, but it will not happen at my under my shift. And I believe that today every person, every decision maker has to work under the assumption that if he can see his data, someone else can see his data.
Mhm.
And you have, this is the working assumption.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I know we're tight on time, so I want to get to our two companies that are presenting to just give us an idea of some of the exciting technology that's happening in Israel. Our first company is Tetavi. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it's Moshe Karako, who's the Vice President of Business Development and Products. And their company does volumetric video capture. They create true-to-life holograms for immersive viewer experiences. They've worked a lot in the United States. And if you look at their website, they have this really amazing person kicking a soccer ball, and then it shows up, you know, on this video. And I keep thinking about, oh my gosh, if our children to get a hold of that, they could say, hey, we're off in the park, and really be somewhere else. It's really fascinating what they can do. So that was really exciting to see, and you should all take a look at their website. And then after Moshe speaks, we'll have Aaron Barzilay from Texel, who's in business development and sales as well. And they deliver highly personalized viewing experiences at scale. They leverage their platform to combine multiple streams and data and social media. Really also a fascinating company where you can have your own customized TV screen and look at your sports and commentators and other screens as you wish them to be. So why don't we go ahead with you, Moshe, and then Aaron, go right to you if we may. They're each going to speak for 5 minutes. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Courtney. Hi, everybody. I have 5 minutes, so I'll do it very, very, very quick. I'm sharing my screen right now. Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. So what that we are doing, it was defined perfectly, but what Courtney said is we create a high fidelity holograms or mini-me's or avatars from real people. So we create a volumetric video. That means a video that have a volume in it, and basically can be viewed from any angle and can be interacted with, and also be used in a more immersive or interactive experience. I will show some demos later, but let's go fast over there. So basically, we built our own capturing system. That means that we started as an algorithm company, but really quick, we discovered that there's no good enough camera that we can use in order to capture what we really want. So we actually went and built one. So what you see here is actually made in Israel. It's 3D printed in our offices in Tel Aviv and built from scratch. And we need no green screens or no markers or chroma keys or any reason. We just set up 4 cameras of those in a regular room, and then you have a full volumetric capture video. Just to understand why we're playing it, Microsoft Studios that do something almost the same, are using 106 cameras and a fully green screen. The main ability to do what we do is just we develop the entire capture process, and using artificial intelligence, or more accurately, deep neural networks and machine learning capabilities, we are creating this 3D avatar and basically built a distribution channel that based on large amount of partners, including Unity and Unreal and many other Android and Apple and many other partners, to actually you'll be able to watch this. There are several videos, but videos usually don't pass on so good on video conferences. So actually, I can share these slides with anyone that want to get it, and you can see demos, both demos and videos later on. We also, part of the things that we developed is also rigging capability. That means that since the machine, the artificial intelligence, have semantic understanding of the human body, once we scan someone, even for 10 milliseconds or 1 second, we can extract his full skeleton. Think about it, that a person can come in, stand in a T-pose, and he can act in 10 movies later without even step foot on the stage. So basically, we can like puppeteer real persons using motion capture and big technology. So let me review several projects that let you understand a little bit of what we are doing. We will not have so much time for demos, but maybe later on. Actually, every device they have a screen on can display our content, and almost every segment that you can think of can be used, and I will show some examples. One example is at the very start of the COVID-19 crisis, there was Israel Independence Day. The president of the state of Israel wanted to have a speech, but actually everything was closed. All ceremonies were canceled, and no one can join any of the events that were planned. Everything was canceled. Actually, what we did is we have a scan of a 1.5 minute speech by the president of the state of Israel. Then this was uploaded to Amazon Web Services Cloud and can be delivered as a live stream to almost every phone in Israel. As far as we know, this is the first nationwide live streaming of our 3D volumetric video. That means it can be augmented at everybody's homes. And they can see we have 250,000 users in the first 3 days. That means almost 2,000 people on each second. This is still alive, by the way. This process is still alive. You can see it on the link over here. There's translated YouTube over there. I can share with you later on. I don't have much time, but we have a lot of things that we are doing on social network, on retail fashion show, virtual fashion shows, fan engagement applications, mobile gaming that we planned for Tokyo 2020. It's like Pokemon Goes with real athletes and real celebrities that are jumping around in the area that you're working on. Broadcast, sports marketing and retail. We also did a movie that was supposed to come first time at Breakout Film Festival in New York this year, before it was canceled. It's a fully immersive movie when you put your VR goggles on and you walk in between the actors while the movie is happening. And there are more than 50 actors and extras was shot for this 30-minute VR experience. So we do a lot of things on the 5G area. I will skip everything because I don't have time. We continue the research. We are now invested. We had a huge round. We got almost $10 million to continue to develop the artificial intelligence and the deep neural networks to develop new and exciting things that I cannot expose right now because it's still under NDA. We have 4 studios worldwide. We are setting up additional 4 in the following months. Even in QV times, we have a studio in Tel Aviv, in Japan, in Los Angeles, California, in San Jose, California, and we set up few as we speak. We are a very small company, 23 people, but there are no young people in the company. We come from a vast experience. Dr. Miki Tamir, by the way, a physicist that have 8 startups still today, sold 5 of them, and now is full-time in the chairman of Theta V. We're looking for collaboration, production studios, gaming partners, brands, everyone that wants to collaborate with what we are doing. And I have my details over here. We can send this through a Utah team. I can send this presentation. Thank you very much. Questions?
Thank you so much. I think we'll go straight on to Texel and take questions afterwards if we can in the interest of time. So go ahead, Aaron. Let's have you go ahead with your presentation. Thank you, Moshe. That was excellent.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Okay, good morning, everybody. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Eran Barzilai, and I'm responsible for the sales and business development of Texel. I have joined lately during the COVID period, which was funny that all the discussions went through the Zoom, like what we do right now, instead of coming to the office and meeting the persons face to face. But we need to adapt and adapt quickly. And before I will start the presentation, I'd like to share with you a quick introduction part of our movie of 50 seconds, and then I will continue from there.
Texel, experience as a service platform, enables content providers to deliver personalized shared experiences for each viewer Through seamless interaction with content and between users, each viewer is getting their own personal stream on any device or network. Choose your own camera angles and commentator. Invite friends to join in. Include stats and social feeds you follow, or even get the next generation of targeted ads. TechCell's platform provides a unique point of view to each viewer by first ingesting an unlimited variety of sources of unbounded size. It then breaks down these massive streams of data into smaller elements, reconstructs a tailored stream, and delivers it all the way to the viewer in real time.
Okay, so this was the movie, and now I will continue with the slides that I prepared for this event today. So basically, we are during the COVID periods, and what we used to do before is not something that we can do today. I can share with you my own personal, experience that my mom lives just across the street from my sister, but unfortunately, they cannot see each other today because the risk of meeting and sharing experiences together. We know that right now the video emerges into critical part of our lives, and this is why all the video chat solutions became so popular, like the Hangouts, like the Zoom, like Microsoft Teams and other platforms that anyone can use it, because until this point, we couldn't use any other technology, but right now it became so easy to use. The flexibility of our solution, which we used all the experience that we brought before of using and synchronizing the stream, basically enable us to select what we want to watch together. We can select the type of content that we want to see together. We can select with whom we want to see together, whether we want to see it in the living room or we want to see it on our mobile device. We can decide what type of engagement do we want to allow to the friends that we see together, whether it's going to be the faces, the videos of ourselves together with our voice, and maybe to send like a quick messages, or just to enable the users to send and to cheer to each other. And the last but not least is to decide what type of experience we are about to see. If we want to have one storyteller that will tell the story to everyone, like storyteller or vlogger or blogger or some experts, or we want to enable our friends to be as equal to ourselves when we watch the movie. Basically, our solution that we call togetherness, and I'm sure that you can understand why we selected the name of this product, which is the complete opposite of loneliness, because we want to connect the people together and to enable them to get the same unified experience when they watch TV, when they see a live event, when they play a game. So this is why we selected this name. And at the same time, we have diverse the product into three segments. The first one is private, when we can invite our friends to a closed area by which we can see and get the same experience. The second one is storyteller, when we have the vlogger or blogger or the influencer that we want to hear him out, okay, and get his feedbacks about the mainstream that we are about to see, or to see an event together with all of the fans of, let's say, the Golden State Warriors, and to cheer them at the same time, to scream, to write a text, or to send emoji into the air. Now, basically, I will explain in more details how the experience will look. So on the lower right side, you can see an ABA game with some commentator that is from Japan that is transcripting and explaining the game for the Japanese audience in Japan. He can share his moment, he can explain what he sees and what he thinks about this game. And of course, this is another way for the companies to monetize and get more money. The second experience is when you have a storyteller that can add not only himself, but also the stats and also other feeds into the main screen and control the entire event. And the last one is when we can see the same story together with our friends, we can share, we can sit together, and this is not something that we can do because of the COVID. Basically, our platform, the Togetherness platform, helps to further accelerate the growth for the OTT players. It means that, let's assume that I am a Netflix member, I can invite my mother or my sister to watch and to co-view the same session, as long as I have the rights from the OTT to invite others. This is from one end. From the other hand, I can invite all my social friends into the same experience that we watch together an event or a movie or some other game that goes live. This is basically a trial that we did with Rakuten in Japan to see a live NBA game together with people that watch it in a different room. Any questions?
That was really great, Aaron. Thank you so much to Aaron and Moshe. Unfortunately, we are out of time, but I'm sure that we can all connect later, and anyone can feel free to connect with me with emails. I just want to ask one more question of Adiv, if we could, before we leave. I obviously, after looking at Startup Nation, the book, they credit Israel's immigration laws for its economic achievements and innovation, which I found so fascinating. And I know that Israel and Utah are so similar in so many ways, but I'm curious, Utah it's very easy to get comfortable sitting in Utah. We don't face the same issues that Israel does in terms of our neighborhood, if you will. And so we don't have risk embedded in our culture, which is, it's easy to get complacent and not worry about being as innovative and creative with our thinking. And Israel is obviously known for being basically the best in the world in that. I'm so curious, how important do you think immigration is in terms of bringing in sort of outside thinkers, if you will, to the mindset to help Utah continue to be an innovative place?
I think if I may look at our history, I think it's crucial for every culture to be open to additional people, additional culture that are not just caught in what we call the shores of where you've grown. It's crucial. It's crucial even for Utah to bring what we always say young blood into the region. It cultivates, it creates a different momentum. It was important for Israel, and it's continuously to be important to bring additional aliyah and different Jews from the diaspora to continue coming to Israel, because they always bring additional angles for us in Israel. And especially if you're looking at the melting pot, when the world is becoming flat and you have to do global businesses, the more people that are melted in, the more cultures, then you're becoming more open to absorb other culture and other people. It opens your mind, it opens your heart, and it's definitely a positive and crucial momentum to create all the time.
Great, thank you so much. On that positive note, I will send it over to Miles and say thank you all so much for your wonderful presentations. That was so informative, and we're grateful for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for participating. Adiv, Moshe, Eran, thank you very much for being with us. And to everybody, please send us an email. If we didn't get to your question through the presentations, please reach out again. We'd love to follow up with any of our speakers, and I know they'd be committed to answer your question. And as you think about your opportunities in Israel, people in Israel you'd like to connect with, please reach out. Let us know. We'll work with our partners on this today's event and our network in Israel to help open doors and generate momentum for what you'd like to do in Israel. So again, thank you, everybody.